this call is being recorded, so you know. Okay, but today we have another edition of ProductTank Barcelona. So I will do, as we always do, a brief introduction. But before I get started, usual question: who is coming to ProductTank Barcelona for the first time? Oh, that's a good one. So probably 50%, I would say. Okay, well, that's usually what we get. We get around 40%. But yeah, so we are ProductTank Barcelona. This is the meetup we do monthly. So if you join for the first time, know that you can expect future events regularly. And the ProductTank is not only here in Barcelona, it's a worldwide organization, which our mission is to foster collaboration and grow within the local product communities, so we can further our craft. The intention, or maybe just to give you the context on how many cities we are in the world, we're in over 200 cities. Here in Europe, we are, I think, in over 90 or so. So it's kind of a stronger footprint, as you can see with all the clubs there. But yeah, essentially, this is a very large community. And just to give you a size of how big the community is, we have over 200,000 members. We have, that's probably not updated, but we have over 100 meetups every 2 months. So each city is really engaged and meeting regularly. We have this many attendees in the last 12 months, and this is growing actually pretty fast year over year. So it's a very engaged and active community that you can find almost everyone in the world. So if you have, for example, colleagues in other cities, if you work, for example, in a regional company, you can probably tell them to look for the local ProductTank. And of course, if you have colleagues in Barcelona that haven't joined us yet, please refer them to us. And yeah, on our side, we just go beyond the 4,000 members. So woohoo! That's the most vanity metric ever, because as you can see, that this kind of sign up, so that can only grow. But we are super engaged. We have 10 events over the last 12 months, and that's kind of our regular cadence. We have around 3,000 RSVPs, and in the last 12 months, we have 1.5 new members. So out of these 4,000 new members, many of you are new and joining for the first time. So we want to keep this community growing and so active. We are the organizers. I'm Nacho Basino. I'm here with this wonderful team. I'm also regional coordinator for ProductTanks in EMEA. So if you are wondering if there is a ProductTank in another city, please contact me. But I'm joined here by Jessica, by Loic, by Karin, and Guido and Adriana, who are not here today. But this is a team that are kind of bringing this content to you, hopefully. And if you want to connect us just for any other reason, know that we are here for you. Today we have two wonderful speakers, and as you can see in the title, we are very focused on AI, very kind of hot topic at the moment. But I will introduce the speakers later, but we have people coming from outside Barcelona to visit us and to share this great content as well. So we are super proud to be able to have this stage for them. And today's host is InfoJobs, who is giving us this wonderful office and this wonderful space and the afterward drinks and snacks we will have. So thanks, InfoJobs, for having us, and they will give us a few words.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is Marta Ros. I'm the product director at InfoJobs, and we are the #1 job board here in Spain. And perhaps it sounds a little bit outdated, so bear with me. I'm going to match a little bit with the topic that we are going to be talking tonight. But before going in deep, let me ask you a couple of questions. So how many of you have ever used InfoJobs in their careers? One. Not that bad. Awesome. Second question, and because the topic is about AI, I want you to tell me for how many years we have been using AI in our platform. So I'm going to drop some numbers, and for the ones that are going to be closer to the number of years, we have a prize. Awesome. So let's say 1 year, 2, 3, 5, put the hands like 7, 8, 25 years. Good, because we have 25 years. That's the reason why I was asking. Awesome. So the right answer is 8 years. We have been using AI for 8 years, and we are an AI-driven talent marketplace. So Why was that? Because indeed, when we are talking about hiring, the hiring process was broken years ago. No, it was very manual, still is very manual today. There are still people that go out there with the CV printed to find a job. But back in the days, like recruiters were droning within like thousands of applicants. They wish. Probably hundreds, like copy pasting, no, the job offer, or even the candidates were trying to stand up, no, among other applicants in the same job offer. So we were asking ourselves how, with AI, we can change a little bit the status quo of the situation. So I'm going to focus on 3 different areas that are key for us. The first one is on the content enhancement, right? On the first place with the candidate, no, to try to fill in all these gaps in the CVs that is very difficult to fill sometimes, no, with this blank page syndrome, but also for the recruiters to have better job offers, to make it more attractive for the talent that they are searching for, and even making it also inclusive, right? Which is very important. Second one is on the matching, and this is our core. This is what we do. We connect candidates with recruiters. On one side is about reading, no, all these skills, all this career path that they have gone through to connect to the right job offer, but also to help the recruiters to scan through all these applicants that they have applied for the job offer. And the last one is for engage both sides of the marketplace. On one side, helping the candidates, no, for the search with alerts, no, saving them a little bit of time on the search of the new job opportunity. On the other side, also engaging with all these passive candidates through AI, no, helping them with, for example, GenAI insert hundreds and thousands of CVs. But this is not about making AI going against human beings throughout the hiring process, because at the end of the day, it's humans talking to humans, and also it's humans working at the end of the process with humans. So for us, it's making the hiring process smarter, also fairer, and more efficient. So today, because we have so many professionals in product in the state, I wanted to drop a talent. So if you haven't used InfoJobs, download the app, go to the web, explore the AI. And I would like you also to give us some feedback on what you see, how you experience with it, and why not, what will you build next? So I'm going to be here after the speakers that you were waiting for, not me. So if you want to approach me, I will be more than happy, or we can connect. And this is going to sound weird, through LinkedIn, and that will be nice. Good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Because we don't know who won, you can take the prize yourself. Thank you.
At the end, and we can. Because I
Yeah.
want one.
You get this in yourself. So, okay, yeah, we see this. Yeah, so final minute from my side. I will introduce the speakers. As I was saying, we were very fortunate to have 2 international speakers coming to Barcelona to speak about these topics. We have Janna. I didn't ask you, are you originally from Germany? Yes, so coming from Germany, so coming from Berlin, but also originally from Germany, who has been in AI before it was a hype, and she has a book coming out on the topic. So she will give us, she's working with very interesting projects about AI and also helping PMs on that front. And we have Dave, also coming from the UK, and he is an excellent coach. He has a great book called The Product Momentum Gap, which I highly recommend. And he will also help us in our jobs as PMs to involve AI and how to use it. So without further ado, Janna, welcome to stage.
I think it's okay. Perfect. Thanks for the introduction, Nacho. So For today's talk, I picked this title image. That's a Rubik's Cube. I hope that most of you do recognize it. So when I was a kid, I really enjoyed playing with this kind of things, right? So I would just start, I would get moving and moving the cube, and it would seem like everything is working fine and everything is falling well into place until I just got stuck at some point, right? And I would need to start from scratch again. And then at some point, a kind person came along who knew how to do it and just gave me a little bit of guidance and just, some quick tips on how to do it correctly. So first you need to collect the white side, then you need to collect the yellow side and so on. And suddenly things fell into place. So like with a little bit of guidance, right, I really had this high leverage and was able to do it very quickly. And at some point it even got boring. Story, that's because I believe that something very similar is happening now in AI. So I've been in the space since 2010. I did my PhD in AI in 2015. So that's when I finished. And that was a time when we had the small classification models, self-trained, local with scikit-learn and so on. Sentiment analysis was the biggest challenge. And we had a lot of rules. So I was building chatbots, among others, and there were a lot of rules, of logical formalisms and so on. And since 2022, of course, we have ChatGPT that came along, right? And it kind of created this illusion or feeling among companies that, okay, AI is now accessible to everyone, right? So all of us, we have access to the best models, to the best components, the best frameworks, and so on. In a way, it is so, right? And it's super fun to play with these models, and it's super fun to prototype with them. But when you actually want to take something into production and especially release it to external users, then it gets very hard. So I've seen like many companies really making a lot of mistakes on this path, right? That kind of doesn't make it impossible, but it just slows them down. And that's why eventually I decided to write a book about all those mistakes that I have made myself since 2010, right? And some other learnings as well. So the book is called The Art of AI Product Management. It's published with Manning Publications. It doesn't really establish or aim to establish AI product management as a new discipline or AI products as a new category of products, right? Instead, it really focuses on giving you this kind of upskilling and the specialized knowledge that you need to become excellent at building AI-driven products and AI features. So it starts with understanding AI value creation. How can you actually identify the best opportunities for AI? Then to create value, you really need to have a deep understanding of the technology itself, right? So in the book, it goes into predictive AI, into generative AI, into agent systems, and also a lot into working with data. Then user experience. So AI introduces a new dimension into the user experience, which is uncertainty and this, inherent failure potential. You can't do anything against it. It will just fail from time to time, right? So how can we manage this in the user interface? Communicating with stakeholders, very interesting topic, especially, I don't know, some of you are probably experienced in talking to management or leadership about AI, or maybe people who don't have a technical background. And then things can get very weird because this, if you don't have a technical background, then you tend to develop let's say, very interesting ideas about how AI works. And of course, all these topics like how can we overcome privacy, governance, security, and compliance challenges. This kind of the overview, right? So if you're interested, please check it out. I actually just finished writing the chapters last week, so I'm now in the very, very final revisions of the book. But I have to say my head is a bit full across all these topics. I'm jumping a lot. So that's why today it was also a bit hard for me to choose one topic to focus on. And we will actually focus on 3 topics. So these are 3 topics that I also see quite frequently in my consulting activities with companies coming up at the moment, right? So I would just like to give you also some, let's say, real life insights into these topics today. The first one is value creation, so identifying opportunities. Then how can we build as a company a competitive moat and a strategic advantage with AI? And finally, the topic that I already alluded to in the table of contents, so managing trust and uncertainty in your user interface. Let's dive into it. Value creation with AI. Let's just start with a question. So why are you doing AI, or why are you here? Maybe you want to do AI and so on. I will not do a hand-raising exercise, just, do that kind of introspection with you. Here are some of the common reasons that I hear on the company level and on the team level. The first one is everybody else does, right? Quite valid, okay, our competitors do it. If we don't do, then we might stay behind. The second one, we are very good at it. So I don't know, maybe we have a team of AI PhDs hidden somewhere in the cellar, and now finally we can bring it out. The third one is our leadership / investors, founders, whoever wants us to do it, right? They're quite hot on it. Then the technology is great and we are excited. AI is a perfect fit for a user need that we have already identified, so we are quite clear about what our users want and we can address it with AI. And finally, we really want to build a long-term strategic advantage and a competitive moat with AI. So these are kind of the reasons that I think they come back from conversation to conversation. Question to you, which of these do you think is a good reason to do AI? 5, 6, yes. Yeah, okay, that's nice. Convergence. Yes, if you go like, so product management, that would probably be one, right? So I have a user need and okay, by chance, AI seems to be the right solution to address it. 6 is more long-term, right? So you might need to invest more, you might need to risk more and so on. Just for disclosure, for my companies, I have 2 companies. One is doing consulting, the other is a B2B product company. It was actually 2, right? Because I have a PhD in AI, and my co-founder at the time was also very deep in the space. But honestly, if I think a bit further, I don't know if you share this opinion, but I believe that actually the reason why you're doing AI, it doesn't matter so much because AI is a pretty universal technology, and it's very likely that at your company, you actually have really great opportunities that you can address in AI, right? It can be explicitly in your product, a user-facing opportunity. It can also be in the backend. Maybe you can optimize your processes using AI. So what counts is that you really can identify those opportunities and that these opportunities match the skill levels and the resources that you have in your team, right? Because a team of AI PhDs, they will address a different kind of opportunity than if you just have engineers who kind of try, to catch up on the AI technology. So how can we go about opportunity discovery? When we look at it from the beginning, we normally try to, let's say, take a very proactive approach to opportunity discovery, right? So here we will build something that's very similar to Teresa Torres' opportunity solution tree, but we will basically not really start with customer needs, customer problems, and so on. Instead, we will start with those inherent and very general benefits that AI can provide for products, for services, and so on. So these are the 4 groups of benefits where we see most of the opportunities, features, and products falling into. First, we have automation and productivity, right? So that's probably what everybody is thinking about when we say AI, right? Okay, AI will automate my job away or maybe some boring routine away and so on, right? Then we have the second one, improvement and augmentation. So we still have humans who do specific tasks, but then they're supported and augmented by the AI. Then we have the third benefit, which is innovation and transformation. So this one is quite strategic. It's more about how can we innovate and transform, let's say, our business model, maybe create a new product, a new service with AI. And then, of course, we have personalization, right? So personalization kind of relates to all three of them, right? And it's just that you're building a product that doesn't really cater to one customer segment anymore, or maybe 4 or 5 customer segments or user segments. Instead, you really cater to user segments of size 1, right? So really providing them very individual experiences. I would like to show you how we filled this tree, or how we build it for a project that we are doing now with Lufthansa, so the German airline. And for them, we are building a system that basically supports their innovation process. So it's a system that starts with a lot of research, market insights, competitor insights, and so on. And then it goes into more creative tasks, so like supporting the brainstorming and the ideation during the innovation process. So here are the opportunities that we discovered for them, and that we also now are covering this development. So first we have for automation and productivity, basically we started with competitor monitoring and then customer feedback analysis. So these are really the tasks that they are doing manually at the moment, and they're very happy about an AI solution to automate them away, because no user, no employee, and even the market analysts, they're really tired of sifting through those big quantities of news, of data, and so on, basically to extract all kinds of insights from them. Then we have improvement and augmentation. So here we are able to support them by identifying relevant trends and monitoring these trends over time. Then based on these trends and based on the competitor monitoring, we can also provide them with recommendations for how they can improve their services and products, and then also help them write and compose their decision papers, so for leadership approval, for management approval, and so on. In the third bucket, so innovation, we have to support ideation and brainstorming. So really have a solution that is very flexible. For example, if they go into a workshop, into an ideation workshop, then they can kind of use it as a conversational assistant just to support their brainstorming activities. And then these are like future thoughts, so AI-driven prototyping. And then for the personalization, or let's say for them, it's more like department level customization, right? So we have the airport department, they want one thing. Then we have like food and service department, another thing. The crew still has other needs, and so on. So that's kind of the tree, an excerpt of the tree that we built for them at the beginning of the project. It's actually really not so difficult to build, right? So we normally even use GenAI to support the process. We have prompt templates and so on, where you can input all the specifics of the customer, and then it will give you quite decent drafts. Now, the question is, okay, we have these very rough opportunities, right? We know that they will bring value. Now, how can you prioritize them? Of course, we will do an assessment according to value, feasibility, desirability on the part of the users. But in general, a rule of thumb is to start on the left side and then move to the right side, right? So especially start with these automation and productivity opportunities, because these are normally your low-hanging fruits, right? Normally, they are simpler technically because they consist, let's say, maybe of one step. These are normally quite simple tasks that don't really have a very complex workflow, right? So yeah, like you would have it in a, let's say, complex agent system. So they're quite simple technically. That's one thing. And the second thing, which is probably even more interesting, is that it's very easy to quantify these opportunities, right? You just count the time that you can save on them, right? So that's really, and then, you know, once you have built this basis, you have some stakeholders on board, everybody likes your AI despite the mistakes, then you can basically go into these more complex and also a bit more ambiguous opportunities, which are not so easy to quantify anymore, right? So that's also how we proceeded with them. Basically, we have a project, now we are in the third phase. But in the first phase, indeed, we addressed these first two opportunities. That was the second phase, then the third phase, and that's kind of the outlook that we're keeping for the future. Good. That was the opportunity part. And now I would like to go to this more strategic question of, okay, we have maybe identified one or two opportunities. We have implemented initial use cases. Now we are thinking about how can we actually sustain or build and sustain our competitive mode with AI. Let's go through some examples of competitive mode. So that's mental model for AI systems that I'm also using in the book and actually also in all the customer projects that we are doing, because it's super simple, but then it's also super versatile, as you will see. So basically it consists of the data, right? It's your raw material that goes into your AI system. Then we have the second component, which is the intelligence component. So here we have all the models, but then you probably know that today we also have this big trend towards compound AI, so AI engineering, where we put together different kinds of models, databases, tools, and so on into the AI system. So that's all packed here in the intelligence component. Here you create your value, and then you have the user experience, which can actually deliver this value to the users, right? And then here you have all this opportunity space with the opportunities that you're addressing. So now, what are some possibilities for competitive modes here? First one is on the data side, we have a unique proprietary data set, right? So for example, we are a healthcare company. We have been in the market for 10 years, and we have collected a lot of data about our pharma tests or about our patients or whatever. And now we can do a lot of learning and get a lot of insights and maybe create recommendations based on this data. Here, the problem is that data sets, they're not necessarily sustainable, right? So maybe you know, so what if someone replicates this data from your AI, right? That can happen technically. It's called model theft, and it's actually classified as a security attack on your system. So someone, a malicious user or a customer, will repeatedly query your model and basically collect all the intelligence from it and then just retrain their own model themselves, right? That's much cheaper, of course, than you setting up the whole system from the beginning, because they kind of get exactly the same inputs and outputs that they want then to use to train the system. So model theft is technical, but that can also happen on a more conceptual level, right? So if you have users who really regularly use your system, then at some point they will be able to kind of absorb its intelligence in whatever way, right? And then to replicate the same thing. Then intelligence, we have the most performant models. Okay, who believes this, right? You're not OpenAI, you're not Anthropic, you're not Google. So please, if you are not, then don't try to compete in the model space, right? You can try to compete with small language models or small models, like domain-specific models in general. That's something we will talk about later. User experience, okay, our UX designers are the best. Again, very subjective thought, right? Especially now with AI UX, so UX skills, they don't automatically carry over when you switch from deterministic products to AI products. And then, of course, opportunity, we identify the unique opportunity. You can't keep it secret for long, right? So, my best bet, so for those companies that are starting out with AI and don't maybe have deep AI expertise, it's normally about recommending them to really build on their domain knowledge in whatever domain they're building, right? So if they're in the healthcare domain, then it should be healthcare knowledge. I have a project at the moment. We are building a software to support sustainability reporting. So I'm working with a co-founder who is very specialized in ESG and sustainability, right? And that plus a very good communication. So between this technical side that I'm bringing and then the domain side, that's something that allows us to build a competitive mode, right? So 3 components: use existing AI components. You can use all the models, all the frameworks out there, right? Maybe at some point you will want to build your own frameworks and models. Then AI engineering skills, so basically putting these components together and also fine-tuning them. That's something that evolves over time, right? So at the beginning, maybe you use prompt engineering, then you will build a simple RAG system, then you optimize it to that, and at some point you can build a working agent system. And then, as said, unique domain expertise, right? So the better you are at integrating this domain expertise into this part, so the AI engineering with the existing components, the more sustainable your competitive mode. Let me come back to this example of the Lufthansa project that I mentioned. So there we kind of have this even doubled because Lufthansa, so as our design partner, they basically bring a lot of domain knowledge from the aviation domain, right? So they do a lot of data curation, data annotation, then, selection of data sources and so on. And on our side, we bring knowledge about the innovation process at companies, right? So that kind of even thickens the competitive mode even more. So here I have just listed, again, along this model of an AI system that we saw before, those techniques that we're using in this project to integrate domain knowledge into the system. I will not go into depth about this today, but if you're interested, there is an article online, it's freely accessible, which really goes into more detail about all those techniques. Okay, and now the last part. I hope I'm not too much over time. So the last part, so coming from the value creation, we jump to the UX, right? Because I think that's a very exciting and sometimes also a bit undervalued topic for companies that are building with AI. Here's one of my favorite quotes that I'm living by. So nothing is as fast as the speed of trust. It's a quote by Stephen Covey from his book, The Speed of Trust. So he describes it in the context of especially business relationships, but also a little bit of human relationships. But actually it's something, as you probably know, that applies as well to digital products, right? If your customers trust your product, they will use it, and then they will also recommend it to their peers and to their colleagues or their friends and so on. Now, in AI, we have some additional dimensions that actually challenge trust building, right? So when we come from deterministic software, this traditional kind of tools, right, and then we pass to AI, it brings in this probabilistic experience. So which means that given an input, it will not always give us the same output, right? So basically the outputs are uncertain. There is often a lack of transparency, and then that's the worst of all, the AI will make mistakes. And that's, so in the B2B context, we normally work in the B2B context, that's kind of the biggest risk of AI, right? It's not the fear that the jobs will be replaced or that it will extinguish the world or whatever. It's really this fact that it's making mistakes. How can you build trust? So first, here is the trust scale. So normally when you get out with an initial product, right, your users, they will be on one of the two extremes. Either they have very low trust into the product. So it's a phenomenon that's called algorithmic aversion, which is, maybe some users, they had bad experiences with AI in the past, maybe it didn't perform well and whatever. And then they will just not buy and not use your product. And then on the right side, you have over trust, right? So they will just automatically believe everything that the AI says or outputs, right? And at some point, if you have this kind of automation bias going on and they just blindly accept it, what will happen is that, of course, at some point, it will make a mistake. The user will take the output, will make some decision or some action based on it that will produce real harm, right? So think of a corporate decision. And that, again, destroys trust, sends them back to no trust, and then it's much harder to restore. You want your users to be in this golden middle of calibrated trust, right? So that means that they do believe that the AI creates value for them, but then they are still aware that it has flaws, it will make mistakes, so they use it actively and responsibly. Speaking of fact-checking, checking mistakes, and so on. How can you calibrate trust, and how can you actually build it in the first place? We often talk of AI as a black box, right? And if you have a black box before you, then, well, it's naive to over-trust it, right? Just to trust everything that's in there. So it's very easy to say, okay, I don't really trust it. What you can do here, and that's actually a very important job, I believe, for product managers, is, of course, to create transparency into this black box by providing an explanation of your system. Okay, I will give you a very simple recipe for explaining AI systems. It's a partial explanation, not complete. Complete is normally quite overwhelming for most users. So first, of course, you need to explain the capabilities and the limitations of the system. Sounds simple? Focus on the limitations, right? Capabilities, we have this marketing culture today, so normally we don't really have any problems with capabilities. Now, limitations. I don't know if some of you remember this character. I think it's from the 90s or 2000s. So that's Clippy. Clippy, Microsoft's very early AI assistant, I think from, like 30 or 25 years ago, AI already existed back then, right? And Clippy was a widget in Microsoft Office. So you would just work in your office environment, writing serious letters, maybe doing a financial forecast in an Excel table, and Clippy would come out and suggest help. Right, so like here we see this a bit exaggerated meme. We have this villain who is trying to take control of some strategic satellite. And then Clippy comes out and, hey there, it looks like you're trying to take over the world. How can I help you? So clearly a bit overestimating its capabilities, right? That's quite exaggerated, obviously, but still it's very important to communicate these limitations often to a rather deep degree, right? So for example, so in our system, for example, we are mainly focusing on data in English and German language. So when we do this innovation, discovery, competitor monitoring, and so on, and then we really need to clearly communicate that, okay, we don't have such a good overview over the Japanese local press or the Latin local press and so on, right? So these are really, it can really go quite down to some depth. As long as it is relevant for your users, you should really go into this level of details. Then the second one, the data sources, that's often something that's super useful, super high leverage, right? Because once you provide it to your users, they will kind of have this aha moment. Okay, that's the knowledge that the AI has. Even if they don't know exactly how the AI formed its knowledge from this data, how it was trained, still it kind of grounds them in reality. It makes it transparent because they can then trace it back to the original data sources. How do the models work? Complex topic, it's not always possible, or it's never possible. If you have a model of a decent size, right, you can't explain all the mathematical calculations, all the gradients and so on that's going inside it, but still try to provide some very intuitive, maybe example-based explanations, right? So if you have a generative model, okay, it's trained to not to converse with you, it's actually trained to generate the next word in a sentence, right? And that's just, the training data that it gets from you, it's structured as conversation. So over time, it will learn to converse with you, right? So this kind of very simple explanations will also help your users evaluate why and when the AI makes mistakes. And then also, that's not really explaining the black box, so how to act on the outputs, right? It's not really about the black box anymore, but it's about how you can work with the black box. What you find, though, is that this one kind of covers a lot of the explanation needs that customers have because it really conveys the value that the AI has to them, right? So for example, if we provide analytics, then we explain, okay, if you have this kind of trend curve, then maybe it's a very, hot, high rising trend at the moment, right? So it might as well be a fad. You might need to monitor it over a couple of weeks, and then you will see how it will develop. So just, giving them these clues about how to interpret the outputs. If you have let's say an app for a content generation, give your user guidance about the edit steps that they need to do on the content afterward, right? So that's something that normally creates a lot of leverage also. Here are just two examples how you can do it in the interface. So for example, here you can see it just a tooltip that's explaining the scores that you have in the system, right? If you have a generative application, a generative AI application, then one pattern that we see quite often, so this here is from vo.dev, is basically also to publish the chain of thought of the system, right? You see a similar pattern with O1, with DeepSeek, and so on, right? So then the user can basically go back to specific steps here. They can correct how the AI is thinking about the problem and so on. So that was a very quick and simple recipe for giving AI explanations. You can go into more complex stuff. For example, yesterday, I was reading a paper by Microsoft, and they talk about how you can actually manage over-reliance on AI. And they suggest using contrastive explanations. What is that? It means that in your AI application, you basically explain on the one side, why the AI might be right, and then on the other side, why it might be wrong. Now, you can imagine that that's not suitable for all users, right? For example, I know it's not suitable for our Lufthansa users, because they will just be very confused by this type of explanation, right? But on the other hand, if you're using like code generation or AI-assisted coding, right, then it might indeed be helpful, right? So the AI explains, okay, it might be wrong because maybe I'm not so familiar with this dependency or library that I'm using, then why not, right? It will provide additional guidance to the developers. And then, based on these explanations, you can also offer some cues in the user interface to calibrate the trust of the user, right? So normally you do this by indicating the uncertainty of the AI. So here we have these two cute little animals, right? We have an image recognition running in the background. And then it says, okay, on the left, we have a cat with 98% of confidence. And then on the right, we have a fluff ball, but we're not very confident that it is fun. Right, so that's kind of if you're doing predictive AI, then you can use confidence score. So if you're doing generative AI, then you can integrate this kind of uncertainty directly in the output, right? So you can, replace the cans with could and the will with would and so on. And you can also highlight the portions where the AI is not so confident in the output, right? So these are kind of the basic UX mechanisms. In the book, there is a whole catalog of design patterns, both for explanation and for the trust calibration, right? So if you want to learn more, then just check it out. I would like to stop here, but because they're so cute, but actually there is another a bit tricky topic, very fast, right? Closing the loop back to this value creation that we had at the beginning, right? So what's very important is that from the beginning, when you assess and prioritize your AI opportunities, you should also count in the cost of the mistakes that the AI will be making. What we see often when companies kind of, do their mental calculation of the opportunity is they will consider the cost of developing the AI solution, right? So of developing and running the AI solution. And then on the other hand, they will look at, okay, how much time or how much does it cost at the moment to do the task, right? But they don't consider the fact that the AI will be making mistakes and that will produce additional human effort. So basically this equation, in the case of AI, it should be extended. So you have the cost of finding and fixing the mistakes, right? And then in addition, the risk of uncaught mistakes. Very important. So the risk can be low if you have like sentiment analysis that you're running on millions of documents. Doesn't really matter if it's like not, if it's not an accuracy of 70% that you're getting, then. But if you have something like fraud detection or anti-money laundering and you're working in a bank, then obviously you have an issue, right? Because the risk can be like very high. So that's something really to consider. And I think it's also for product managers a very important aspect to manage, right? What we see often in companies is that they kind of try to offload all this responsibility for the mistakes to the engineers, right? And then the engineers, they kind of have to optimize all their systems to death and still never reach 100% accuracy. At some point, they will get exhausted, burnt out, and so on. And anyway, it's not possible. If your AI has a certain complexity, it's not possible to get 100% accuracy, right? So I believe it's really important for PMs to kind of be very clear about the errors that the system is making, and then also to manage these errors. Okay, to summarize, so think holistically, right? Don't just focus on using the best model or the best algorithm, but really think very holistically. So also accounting for the value creation or starting with the value creation, and then also going in detail into those aspects of the user experience. Then for AI opportunities, you can be proactive. So you don't need to wait for a user need to come along to start exploring AI, right? You can be more proactive, but still do it in a very systematic way. Build and calibrate trust. So trust is probably the main driver of adoption for AI products. And for that, your basis is providing transparency into the system. And then be very clear and also very, let's say, that's something that you need to really anticipate, right? So how you can quantify and manage the failure in your AI system. And last slide. That's my book again, and now it gets complicated. My publisher gave me very clear instructions about that. So basically, today we are raffling out 5 ebook copies. So this is a QR code, not to the book, but to my newsletter. If you sign up today, so during the evening, then basically you will be a part of this lottery and you have the chance to win an ebook. You can unsubscribe tomorrow if you don't like it. It's just a way for us to collect your emails for whatever. And anyway, check it out. So as said, all the chapters are already available. So if you found this kind of insights and approaches that I presented today interesting, then of course just check it out and also get in touch if you have more individual questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janna. That was wonderful. We have time for 2 questions. Then hopefully you can stay maybe in the working time. We can have more, but I have one over there.
Thank you very much. I'm a product designer here, and I have a question. Thank you for covering design-related topics. I have a question to you, maybe because you have very broad industry insight and specific technical knowledge about it. It looks like everyone is building chatbot today, and AI is always, okay, chatbot, it's a chat, and it's the most common use experience you can think about. However, my question is like, don't you think it's a little, like historical bias of what AI can be? Or are there any like other more potential user experience, like, approaches or patterns that you kind of envision to arise, or maybe chatbot will kind of evolve into something else? Specifically, I see a lot of challenges with chatbots. They hallucinate, they have limited context. The history is not the most reliable context storage of what you're trying to get from it. I'm thinking about maybe one narrow use case of trying to code with AI, but yeah, what's your take on that?
So we or that's also the way it's in the book, right? So we distinguish between 3 main types of user experience. One is the graphical interface. So that's something that we use very frequently when we build with predictive AI, right? So we do quantitative analysis of data, sometimes also qualitative, but then you just present a structured interface. That's the classical one, right? Then you have chatbots, and I think there are a lot of good developments in chatbots, right? And it also, when it goes into the direction of voice, then of course you can do a lot of things that are very intuitive to users, especially probably in the B2C context, right? And B2B, it's challenging. Some activities can be supported, right, with chatbots, but then there are many that demand something that's much more like, let's say, fixed and certain for users. And then I think personally, the most exciting trend is, of course, generative UI, right? So where you have your interface that's just building up dynamically from the user interactions. And that can be, so we're doing this also for a chatbot, but then we work with data visualizations, right? So users will basically query the data, and then they either get a textual response or they will get data visualizations out from the database. But you can also take this one level further, right? So you can have a user question, and then you present them with a real interface element, maybe with other interactions and so on. So I think that's the most exciting direction to go into. Now it's not ready for production yet, right? So it's you really need to limit your scope and your use cases. But I think that's super exciting to look into.
This one here.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm not sure that my question will qualify as a proper one, but Janna, could you please share why you've chosen a Sufi dancer for the cover of your book? And what does this MEEP abbreviation, or maybe it's not an abbreviation, what does it mean?
To be honest, it was not really my choice. It was, so, when you work with a publisher, you can't choose everything, unfortunately.
There's some intrinsic meaning about this dancer, how you match it with AI. Some layer.
Well, maybe you can help.
We'll run a contest afterwards. How you can relate this one to AI?
Exactly. That would be a good subject for the raffle, actually. Yeah.
Okay, one big round of applause for Janna again. Thank you so much. So I think I already introduced Dave, but Dave is coming from the UK, so we're really happy to have him here. And Dave, please welcome aboard.
Good. Can you hear me all right? Excellent. So I'm Dave Martin. I'm not going to go into this because Nacho did a great job already. Instead, why am I talking to you about AI? Because what I'm known for is being a product leader. I coach product leaders, mainly on leadership. Why am I talking to you about AI? And very quickly, the reason is when I stopped and thought about it, I spent at least 20 years working in products using AI quite aggressively, from things like you mentioned earlier with CV matching in jobs, but quite a while ago, a long time ago, through to predicting spend for Google so they could work out how much more money to spend on their own advertising. They had no budget. Their ad spend was based on ROI, but their staff left money on the table because they were too scared to hit the upper limit and get fired. So they needed some tools to help them. We had predictive tools to do that. And if we fast forward, we did some GPT stuff with the early closed version of GPT when that was first out in the private environment, using it with a product called Content Cow. And that was helping people with social media posting. It was helping marketeers write a post once and then automatically rewrite it for different platforms. So it could go to Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and to Twitter at the time before it was renamed, with appropriately sized text, etc., etc. And we sold that company to Adobe. So they don't exist anymore. Adobe rolled it all into Adobe Express. And then more recently, a bunch of interesting stuff to do with geospatial AI, helping keep us all safe, working to do some projects for the intelligence communities. So quite a few different things. You know a little bit about me. I know nothing about the room. I wouldn't mind just understanding who we've got so I can try and make sure everybody gets something valuable. I know we have one designer because he spoke earlier. So maybe we'll start there. If you're a designer, can you just put your hand up for me? Okay, so a good few of you, well represented. Product managers. Good, good. Good job. Engineers, developers, or data scientists, more technical people. Cool, a few of them. Wow, that light is really bright. I'll stand here, it's less bright. Who's left? Who is left? Who hasn't put their hand up? Project managers. Okay, cool. Anyone else? Say that. Okay, and the man at the back, same. Got you. Brilliant. Thank you. I will try and give everybody something useful. You might not know what this picture is. It has nothing to do with GenAI at all. It's a telegraph. Or in the UK called telegrams, in the US called telegraphs. And to send one of these, you would go to a shop, a post office, and say, I want to send this message to this address. And they would write down the message, and they would send it over a wire in the very early days, Morse code, and less so when this was sent. And it would get printed out or written down at the other end, and then delivered the last mile by hand. And this was the very last, this was sent to me by my mum and dad. My father was a telecommunication engineer, so he thought it was an amazingly big event that the telegram was the last day of the telegram, and sent me and my sister. You can see it's to my sister Faith, and you can see it's from mummy and daddy. You know, so I wasn't very old. It was 1982, so I wasn't that old at the time. I don't really remember it, but it's in my box of things along with a newspaper when I was born. Why am I telling you about this thing? I'm telling you about it because of a company called Western Union. They pretty much invented the telegraph, at least in the US. And it was a big deal because you could send the communication from the West Coast to the East Coast the same day, instead of it taking weeks by coach. So it was a really big deal. And this company did a very good job of doing this. For over 120 years, they made a lot of money and sent millions and millions and millions of telegrams. Huge. If you go to New York, there's a massive tourist building called the Western Union building, which was from these guys. And they didn't stay still with technology. They were the first people to launch a band C telecom satellite system. So they stayed up to detail with this new tech when it came out. Problem is, what did they do with that new tech? They used the satellite system to send their messages faster. They didn't change how they solved the problem. They just carried on doing it. We send our text messages quicker. That didn't work too well. They went into chapter 11, which is American speak for bankruptcy. It eventually got bought out by a different company, and they became a MoneyGram type software competitor, being able to move money from one place to another, or money wiring tool. So they went from having an enormous business, huge success, immense legacy in telecommunication, but all they used the new technology for was sending their messages quicker, instead of rethinking how they could use that technology to help with communication. The telephone didn't help. That obviously impacted their business as well. But it took 50 years for the telephone to become mainstream in their market in the US. The mobile phone came really quick, the smartphone even quicker. In our world, we have this new technology, a bit like they had satellites and telephones. And you get to choose whether you keep doing what you do today a little faster, whether you send text messages quicker or not. The only difference to Western Union is you don't have 120 years to make the decision. It took less than a year for GenAI to hit 40% market penetration in the US market. Less than a year, when it took the telephone 50 years. You don't have that time. Somebody else is going to do something better for your customer and solve their problem in a better way instead of sending text messages faster. Yeah, does that make sense? And just in case you're thinking, well, maybe it's like the internet, you know, when the internet started, and I remember being involved, I was on bulletin boards, BBSs. It was a very small niche of the community. It might have been quite a few people, but it was still very niche. GenAI is not niche. It is broad. As this picture shows, it's all ages, it's male and female. Slightly less used by people in work without a degree, but then the study was about in work, and that kind of work typically isn't knowledge work, which lends itself to GenAI, but it's still being used, which is interesting. It's still considerably, and it's all age groups. So it's everybody. It's not a surprise it's everybody, because to use it, it's extremely accessible. All we've got to do is ask a question. And I don't know about you, but my little kids, when they were little, they're 20 odd now, but when they were little, it took them to about the year, I don't know, 2.5, 3 at the worst, to be able to ask a question a lot and ask the question why. We've been practicing asking questions for a very long time. We're all very good at it, which means it's extremely easy for us to use these tools. Doesn't mean we're going to get the best results, as we've talked about just. Doesn't mean they're not going to be inaccurate and all sorts of other things, but we can use them immediately without any instructions. So I'd like to understand if you're putting GenAI not to help you do your job, but whether you already have GenAI inside your product today. Are you the product you offer your customers? Stick your hand up if it's in there. Cool, so loads of you. Keep the hands up really high. Put it down if it's a chatbot you've built. Cool, let's have a few. Guys, people, what have you built that's interesting? Shout out. A rank system. RAG system on customer feedback. Wonderful. Gentleman over there. Cool, so image recognition for vectorized plans. Awesome, they're different. Creating customer profiles. Cool, so some automation. Nice, audio versions of news articles. That's right, yeah? Cool, I'm just saying it because they're recording this and they can't hear you, you're not mic'd. One more. Improving, oh, awesome, improving decision-making for businesses. Brilliant. Great, so we're already doing some interesting things. Why did I write this talk? Firstly, this gentleman, who hopefully you know who he is, Microsoft CEO, he very loudly stated that the SaaS era will collapse and be replaced with the agent era. Now you can believe that or not. He's got a few $1 billion invested in the agent era, so he's slightly biased. But there is no doubt that a change is happening. A rapid change is happening. And it will take a while for some of those big tools to change, but we are going a different direction for sure. And some of those SaaS tools, not all of them, some of them are definitely going to be short-lived and at risk for sure. Some of them are very basic CRUD tools that basically just provide an interface and some data and don't do very much. And the power of what he was talking about was, for the first time ever, the business logic or even the interface can be completely separated from the underlying data structures, which has not happened before. Those things have been coupled more tightly than we would have preferred in the past. The other reason I wanted to write this talk was an enormous amount of magic dust syndrome. Sprinkling some AI onto the product, mainly because of the issue the previous speaker talked about, where an investor somewhere or a CEO somewhere wants to put AI on the side of the box on the marketing. And we can say we're AI. Please don't do that. It's a waste of time and money, and no one's going to buy a product because it says AI or not. The other reason is because I truly believe that if we harness this new technology properly, instead of sending text messages faster, we can actually make people's lives better. You can make people's lives better. And lastly, it's actually pretty hard to navigate something brand new. There's lots of blockers, there's lots of noise, there's lots of things to disturb and get in the way. It'd be useful to have help to navigate it. So what are people doing already? Let's have a look. Here are some examples. I'm not going to read them all out. You can read the few. A couple I'll pull out though. Amazon is already using GenAI and has been for a while to help the marketplace vendors produce better product descriptions and to pick the right picture that's going to have the biggest impact. Ada Health are a health company, a private healthcare company, are using it inside their application for when their patients are suffering with problems to better understand their symptoms. And JP Morgan made a lot of PR early last year, about how they're no longer having their analysts read financial reports every quarter from Wall Street. Instead, the AI is doing that, and their analysts are reading the AI and doing something more interesting, going more depth, offering more value than their competitors are. I have no idea if this is going to play. It's fine. If I can, I forgot to check this earlier. So let's see if I can make this video play. Oh, look at that. We just watch this for a minute. There should be sound. Oh, it's very quiet. Never mind. Volvo for life. So the point of showing that is that was created by a design studio who's embracing AI quite heavily, and they're using the AI, generative AI. I was Mid-Journey along with just Premiere Pro and some post-production in After Effects. They're using those tools to help them with scamps, help them with test ideas. That's a concept idea that they can put in front of the client. It took them about 48 hours to build it, 2 days. Instead of previously, they'd have done that by going and shooting and doing production. And it would have cost them about 150, 200,000 pounds, and it would have taken weeks to do that concept idea. Now they can do the concept much quicker. So that's not broadcast quality. There's no way Volvo would sign off on that. If you look closely, the car at the beginning was an XC40, the second one was an XC60, and the third one wasn't even a Volvo or any car. It just happened to be a boxy shape. But the concept was there. It helped them with the concept. So even though the tool isn't perfect, as we've talked about already, and there's going to make mistakes, that doesn't mean there isn't a place for these things and to assist the process, not production ready. When I'm not talking to you lovely people, I spend my day in a fractional CPO role, and the rest of the time coaching product leaders and training product leaders. So I thought I'd share a few things that clients of mine are doing. And perhaps the interesting one to pull out here is Mindset AI. They're doing two interesting things. The first is they're taking companies' knowledge data, all the tutorials, all the videos they might have internally, all the learning materials, and they're taking that data and they're providing it for corporates to be able to help people train and learn quicker. So if I'm stuck with something, instead of going and finding it in some huge library of learning materials, which I probably won't do, I can just ask the question. It gives me the answer, and it finds me the 30-second clip, or however long the clip is, of the original video that had the answer, so that I can watch the original video in context and not have to watch an hour-long training video to get that 1-minute snippet I cared about. They're now working on the next iteration. The next big thing is to work on being able to talk to the employee about what your learning goals are, what you're trying to learn, and then create automatically a curriculum based on the content the company already has, a learning course for you based on the existing content. It won't be the same, it'll be different speakers and things all the way through it, different videos and different PDFs, but to provide you a learning journey for something bigger than just a Q&A and troubleshooting, which is really interesting. It's personalized learning, and it's using the assets the company already has. I mean, large organizations have got lots of those assets. There's some other common solutions that people are using. We've talked about chatbots, content generation, obviously code generation. Most people in this room will probably be familiar with that. Now we're seeing more qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis, which we weren't to be at the beginning, and obviously replacing workflows. And that's just the start of kind of things people are doing. So if we understand we can do interesting things and we should be pushing the envelope and trying to use this beyond just the chatbot, we need a model to be able to prioritize, to be able to think about this strategically. And this is pretty much aligned to the previous speaker with the opportunity tree. It's just slightly different. Same idea, exactly the same concepts. What I've taken is Michael Porter's 3 strategies, which are a well-known strategic framework for businesses that taught in MBAs all over the world. And in Michael Porter's view, every company is either focuses, it makes its money, its core thing it does is it does it cheaper than anyone else, it's cost. It does it slightly better than anyone else, that's differentiation. Or it does it more focused than anyone else, which is more about personalization. Until recently, companies that would be in the focused category weren't really tech companies. Because they're people. It would be people. They might be delivering technology, but they deliver custom bespoke technology based on a bunch of engineers and product people and designers to do that. More recently, we're seeing companies where focus is their core proposition be technology. And we've seen that with companies like Netflix. Your experience of Netflix and my experience of Netflix is totally different, and at scale, without them having to have hundreds of people craft those individual experiences. Even if we're looking at even if presenting the same TV shows to us, the thumbnails and the descriptions will be different, depending from me to you, because they generate them automatically based on their algorithms. GenAI definitely opens up new opportunities for companies to offer focus at scale. The previous speaker talked about some new, in the Q&A at the end, some new exciting things with the opportunity for the UI to change, literally based on the design and UI I might be using, based on me and the workflow and what I'm trying to achieve, maybe even my preferences and knowing me. We could never have dreamt of doing something like that in the past. It would have been unscalable. It would have been too difficult. Where now GenAI is allowing us, opening up these new doors. So I think of it, instead of using Michael Porter's 3 things, I think of it as we're either creating efficiencies, doing stuff cheaper, we're enhancing what we already do, kind of in the send messages faster bracket, or we're expanding. We're pushing the boundary and offering a better proposition to solve the same problem, but we're doing it in a new, better way. More valuable way for our customer. Problem is it can still feel a bit off, which we've talked about earlier. We know about hallucinations, etc. And some of you in the room will be pretty familiar with what I'm about to share, and others won't be. So apologies if it's too basic for you. But when I think about how to help the model, an LLM and GenAI do a better job for us, I think about 2 dimensions. I think about, on the x-axis, changing how the model behaves, or the y-axis, changing the knowledge the model has. Yeah, so behavior or knowledge. And at the moment, and this is changing all the time, obviously, because it's an advancing field, but at the moment, this is a reasonable example of some of the key ways to do that. The most easiest is prompt engineering, and that does both things. We can give, through a prompt, we can give new knowledge to the model, and we can give new behavior. We need to give it instructions. RAG, which you might have heard of, is a way to provide lots of documents to the model for it to look at your documents when it produces the answer. I've simplified that. Sorry for the technical people in the room, and very much sorry for the PhD in AI. But I'm a product director, so I'm going to. We don't need to know how it all works as product people. We just need to know what the capabilities are. And I think that's the other thing to remember. It's really easy to go down trying to understand all the detail, but you don't go and try and work out how indexes work in databases and why a store procedure should be written a certain way. You know that these things exist and databases do what they do. We have to have the same level of knowledge as product people as that. We don't need to go into the depths. So RAG will let it come back with, it's a really easy way to give it domain knowledge, your domain knowledge, and get answers to be responded with that knowledge. The 2 pre-training or fine-tuning are ways to train the underlying model. Much more involved, more expensive, more time-consuming, much more technical. your technical teams will need to know more to do that. Configuration is about configuring the LLM, and there's a bunch of different configuration options. Perhaps the easiest one to explain is one called temperature, which we've heard already. The LLM models are probabilistic, so they come up with the most probable answer depending on the algorithm. And temperature helps decide how improbable or probable the answer will be. It says number from 0 to 1. If it's 0, it'll be incredibly improbable and you'll get crazy results. And if it's 1, it'll only respond when it'll try and be incredibly probable, and you'll almost never get a result because it's that makes sense because it's too narrow. It's got to be somewhere in the middle. The default on OpenAI is 0.5, bang in the middle. We mentioned Ada earlier with their health app. When I was doing this talk at ProductTank Oxford, the product manager for that app happened to be in the room, and he confirmed, that they'd been playing a lot with these parameters to fine tune it to get a better, more accurate result, given the importance of giving health advice and not wanting to hallucinate too much. And then function calling is all about behavior. It's allowing, well, it's kind of a bit of both, but it's allowing the model to replies with a JSON request that you then can get farmed out by something else to execute that. And then the response comes back, and the response from that third-party function call, third-party API call is included in the response. So if you had a model that was allowing you to talk to it and then tell you the weather, the agent that was doing the model would have to do a function call to then go and get the actual weather today. That isn't the LLM doing that. It's sending out saying, hey, application, do this, and then give me the result, please, so I can put it in the answer. That's how, in our other example I gave, we didn't talk through it, but there was an airline in the examples that help with booking online and tracing understanding where your booking is and flight statuses and that sort of thing. That's what they're doing. They're having to do a function call to get the flight status. But the response is coming back in the LLM. Try and be quick. I'm going to rattle through these last few slides to keep us on time, but I'm very aware I'm between you and beer. Doesn't seem a good place to be. So worth understanding as product folk what the difference between central and open sourced is. So OpenAI is a centralized model. It's obviously hosted in OpenAI's world. We don't see the LLM. It's not on our machines. It's not on our servers. It's not in our AWS. It's a bit of a total closed black box for us. And that means we build for API consumption. They use tokens to do that. We potentially could end up with data being shared to someone else. There is obviously, if you're paid users and enterprise contracts, that shouldn't happen. That's contractually prevented. But that doesn't mean that your companies are willing to trust the contract. I work with some people who are, especially if you're in a regulated environment, they'd be very uncomfortable with that risk, especially say legal tech who are using it for discovery in law cases or using it to help with contract writing so that the contracts are written in a similar vein to the previous contracts. They're very uncomfortable putting some of that data anywhere else, regardless of paperwork saying they won't use it. And then lastly, some of the configuration options and some of the tuning options are more limited when it's a centralized model. The alternative approach is a decentralized model. Normally they're open source, not always. Amazon Bedrock, which is the Amazon part of AWS that offers you LLMs out of the box to host in your own clouds. That has one that's private, that's paid for. It's not open source, but it's not centralized, it's decentralized, but normally they're open source. So things like Llama from Facebook, from Meta, and there's quite a few others. They're models that you can run on your hardware, on your laptop, or in AWS. And services like Bedrock and Databricks makes it really easy to spin this up incredibly quickly and cheaply. The difference here is you're hosting the model, which means you're paying for the compute to run it instead of paying a consumption fee. So it's a different way to budget, and you can control the budget, and depending on your volume of usage, can be a lot cheaper, especially if you're doing lots of things like RAG, because that increases the number of tokens used per request, which increases the cost. So you can manage the cost differently here. And obviously, as we mentioned, you've got more control over where the data lives for regulatory environments. Some of you will be thinking, oh, but I thought I had to have billions of pounds worth of NVIDIA chips to do LLMs myself. That's for building them, not for running them. If you've got an iPhone, you're running an LLM called Apple Core on your iPhone now, because it's deployed in all iPhone updates. It's in the last 2 updates it's been in. Very quickly, I wanted to make sure you had something you could take away and use immediately. So in the prompt engineering, if we do in my GenAI training course, the prompt engineering stuff is quite involved and goes into much more detail than this. But this is a nice, easy acronym to take away called RISEN. You set the role, you say the instruction, you clearly steps, end goal and narrowing. I'll give you the example I've written here. Your role is a writer for professional education publication aimed at product leaders such as VPs of product and CPOs. My newsletter. Instruction, review a transcript from an interview and generate ideas for future newsletters. Steps. First, summarize the transcript with no more than 10 key points. Consider the leadership challenges around influence, decision-making and strategic alignment, and suggest 5 article topics informed by the interview and showcase the interviewee's opinions and advice. End goal. Present the summary as bullet points and present the article topic ideas in a table with 3 columns, topic, leadership challenges, and quote from the interviewee. Narrowing. Do not make up the topics, because before I put that in, it made up the topics. They weren't in the interview. They are not informed by the interview. Do not make up quotes. Use exact phrases as from the transcript, and do not show quotes from the interviewer, because that was really annoying when it showed my question instead of the answer. That's RISEN, and hopefully that's a reasonable example. If you use that with your prompts, you're going to get much better value out of ChatGPT immediately. How long have I got? Right, I'll rush. This won't take long. We will go into it very, very briefly. Things are moving into the agent world. You'll have heard the phrase agents and agentic. Very, very quickly, very high level. What's an agent? An agent is using GenAI in order to perform a task in an autonomous manner. That doesn't mean there can't be a human in the middle. It doesn't mean it has to send an email without you seeing it, but it's written the email autonomously. It could have sent it as well. An agent needs prior knowledge. An agent needs context or information. Sometimes that's called environment, depending on what books you read and what articles. And it needs tools. So super quick. What do I mean by tools? Well, this is GPT, ChatGPT. ChatGPT, if you create a GPT of your own, it's an agent. We've set some context and instruction, and they offer you some tools. Not many, but some. And one of them is web search. That's a tool. And we can ask it to do something. And in this example, my input was HubSpot, the company name. It followed the instructions. It did what it should. It went and looked at the websites I told it to look at, not just any website. And it returned the data in the format I wanted. That's an agent. Multi-agents are much more fun though. If one is good, more must be better, surely. In this example, say an agent to write a blog post. We might have something that researches topics. We might have another agent that authors articles. We might have another agent that's brilliant at taking articles and creating great images for them. And we might have an agent that's brilliant at writing headlines, because that's a very specific thing. And then we might have a different agent that knows how to put it on Substack and do things over there. And some of them have different tools. This is super simplified, but it gives you the idea. If you want to play with agentic and agents, I highly recommend going and playing with a product called relevance.ai, which this is a screenshot of. They give you 100 credits for free, which is more than enough to have some fun. The important thing about relevance.ai is they offer loads of different tools built out of the box. So you can easily connect it to your email or to Google Docs or to all sorts of different things. And then the tools, the actions it can perform with the tools are much more interesting, much more useful. And you can see some of the others here, like YouTube and Linear and all sorts of different things. I'm going to skip that in the order of time. I'm going to skip that and just go to next steps. And then I won't stop you having beer. Next steps. I think the next steps earlier were brilliant about quick wins. And I'm saying the same thing, but even earlier, potentially. If you're not using GenAI in your teams yet, and people aren't using it on a daily basis, I would highly recommend you start there first before we even think about building anything, and get used to the paradigms, get used to non-deterministic, get used to all the issues, and understand the power of it, and challenge yourself to play with some of those tools, and challenge yourself to see what happens if you try and create a video. I did that, by the way, and my video was appalling. The guy who did that's a freaking genius. Mine looked awful. So it's not as easy as it looks for some of the things, and it's really easy for other things. But I would start with learning the tools and feel safe with them in the business. So your teams feel safe, your managers feel safe. Then I would start thinking about how we're going to use these things to solve customers' problems in a better way, and help our customers and create new value instead of sending text messages faster. I would have promoted a course in London, but it's sold out, so you can't come to it even if you want to. You can buy my course and you can download these slides. And that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dave. But a lot of us is going to be very late tonight doing agents stuff and with all the tools. I'm going to give time for 2 questions. Sorry for it, because we are short on time, and also, as Dave mentioned, we want you to have beers. So if there's anyone who has questions in the room for Dave. Perfect.
Hello, Dave. Thank you for the brief, elaborative explanation. I'm myself a product researcher, and I have a question of curiosity and enthusiastic approach. Let's say that you're data mining and all the systems of how AI structure is built on feeding the tools and agentic AI from the existing data, which is per se for millennial data, like the generation gap of people who have been existing before, and their inputs and their preferences have been fed into the world web, and that data has been data mined, and that's going to be formatted into a new form or a preliminary, predictive or a probability answer. How will this approach be taken forward or evolved when the Gen Z is going to take over and their preference is going to stand out in next terms of preferences in their own taste? And how would the industry itself would take measures to cope up with adaptability and deliverance in terms of delivering the right accuracy, in terms of what is searched with specific, let's say that to answer this and make it more simpler, people who would be searching this, you would have the data that they would be millennials or they would be Gen Z or they would be X, Y, Z and so on. But delivering the them and giving preferences and context, how would this problem be tackled for years to come?
I cannot answer that. I think it's a wonderful question, and I don't have an answer. I'm very sorry.
I would appreciate anyone here would answer that, because I am a researcher myself and I'm writing articles to publish on how the ethical governance and sustainability in AI models is going to take place. And I've come all the way from India. So I would be really appreciative to anyone who would find answers to my research.
Stand up so in the networking you can recognize the side.
Hello. Hi. Anyone who has an answer to my question, please reach out. Later. Thank you.
I'm very sorry I can't answer that.
No worries.
It's way beyond the reams of product into deep
Another
AI.
question, and the last one.
Hello. I'm interested on the agentic AI part, more from the service provider point of view. So from your perspective, what should service provider need to do to prepare their service for agents?
That's a great question. I think first actually answer, potentially, there's going to be a lot of options there, and it's a challenge lots of people are dealing with. Just make sure everyone heard the question. If I'm a service provider, how do I prepare myself, how do I prepare my business for an agentic future? Some companies I'm working with who are dealing with that problem right now, their answer is to create an agent that is the interface. If the language of agentic is cross communication between agents, and having an interface that's not an API but is an agent with new levels of reasoning inside. If we're properly agentic, the agent would have reasoning and evaluation of its answers and longer term memory and be improving as it goes, rather than just multi-agent architecture. By offering your own agentic interfaces, they can then easily be imported and adapted and integrated into other people's agentic frameworks. And like immediately, there's nothing to stop it. It's because it's just going to talk to it in sending a prompt in English for you to then respond to and fit into their models.
Thank you.
New interface, not just APIs.
Not an API, an agent.
Okay.
Have a look have a look at Crew AI, much more programmatic version of relevance, and they have examples of that with third-party service providers with their agents in Crew AI already, for people to build their own solutions using those, which demonstrates what I've just described.
Thank you so much, Dave. A big applause. Gracias. So, before we go for drinks, I'm going to ask you for a few favors. Very, very simple. So don't worry, nothing very hard to do. The first thing, you know already, we are a very big group. We are 6 organizers, but it's fully volunteer for us. So you can help us and you can collaborate with us. There's a few ways. Spread the word, of course. As Nacho mentioned, we are more than 4K product tankers in the community, and we want to be even more. So spread the word. If you want to host us, like today, InfoJobs did this amazing job with all the things that you're seeing now. Please reach to us, or even on LinkedIn, on Meetup, reach to us and propose your company. We will be very happy to be hosting an event there. The same if you want to be a speaker. Do you think you have something to share to the community? Just please reach to us, and we are happy to give you a mic. The last but not least, to share your feedback. We're a product community. We learn by doing, and we learn by the feedback of our users, or in this case, community. So here you have a QR code. Please, everything that you liked it, didn't like it, everything you can add it there. And I have a very last favor before we go for drinks. This is a very unusual one, and Nacho is looking at me because I'm going to channel my inner content creator, which I'm not, but I will do my best. I don't know if you're aware that in May, there's the World Product Day, sorry. So in the whole ProductTank community, not the Barcelona one, the global one, they are organizing videos for every community to send to them. So today you're going to be the actor, the principal actor of this community. Super sorry if you are not prepared for this. Me neither. So what we need to do, if you don't mind, is just a 2-3 seconds video. Nacho is going to be my cameraman. I'm using Nacho Bacino, the one and only, as a cameraman. Sorry for that. So we need to do, sorry for these guys, less than a minute, we're going to get the beers. We need to say hola from ProductTank Barcelona. Why is that? We are almost the biggest one, so we wanted to have representation in this World Product Day from ProductTank community, so please help me. I have an idea, maybe it's easier. I'm going to say hola from, and then you speak, and then you shout ProductTank Barcelona. What do you think? And then you just scream and don't throw anything, please. We want to keep the safe place. And before, sorry, I forgot to say thank you so much for the speakers, and thank you so much for InfoJobs for having us here. When you go out, you're going to see the beers. I think we have pizza, and also we have this very sweet that I'm very curious about it, and we're going to open it in the canteen. So again, I'm not a content creator. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to say hola from ProductTank hola from. I'm going to run away and you scream ProductTank Barcelona, yes? Director, please tell me when to. Thank you so much, everyone. You are the best content creator ever and the best product managers. We see every of you on the other side. We're going to have beers, pizza. We're going to bring these sweet things. We are going to have the speakers as well if you wanted to ask questions, the researcher with the question on AI, and us as well. See you in the next Product Tank.